going to look at the second part of Module 2, and this is a focus on tenses. So what is a tense and what does it tell us? At a basic level, tense can tell us something that happened in the past, the future, or the present time. So let's look at some examples. Simple tenses. In the present simple, I drink tea. In the past simple, I drank tea. And the future simple, I will drink tea. Imperfect tenses. We have the present perfect, I have drunk tea. The past perfect, I had drunk tea. And the future perfect, I will have drunk tea. And then we have continuous tenses. In the present continuous, I am drinking tea. In the past continuous, I was drinking tea. And the future continuous, I will be drinking tea. MFP. So what is MFP? This is something you should consider whenever you're teaching tenses in the classroom. Meaning, form, and pronunciation. And this is the guidelines. So meaning, how do we actually use that tense? Form, what do we need to make it? Sometimes I would refer to it as ingredients or parts that we need to make the tense. And pronunciation. So this is any problems that students may have with particular pronunciation regarding a particular tense. Time and aspect. So this is also something to consider when teaching tenses. Time is when an action takes place. And this is our present, past, and future. Aspect is how the speaker sees the event or the action. And this is known as simple, continuous, or perfect. It's often said that there are two tenses in English, the past and the present, and the future is often not included as a tense, instead saying we use the modal auxiliaries will and shall and the present tense to express the future. So let's start with the simplest tense, the present simple tense. And again, let's work through meaning, form, and pronunciation. So, how do we use the present simple tense? We use it for everyday routines and habits. For something that's a general truth, I am English. For permanent situations in the present time, I live in Liverpool. With timetables, the train leaves at 6 p.m. Or immediate reactions for today. Your hair looks nice, it's so cold today. So the form, how do we form the present simple tense? So we have the verb and we need to conjugate it accordingly. So for example, I work, she works, you work, they work. It only changes in the third person singular. And it's that third person singular S. I work, he, she, it works. Let's look at a positive sentence. She looks happy. And then make it negative. She doesn't look happy. And then make it into a question. Does she look happy? So again, if we focus on meaning, form and pronunciation, meaning is how we use it. The form is the base of the verb and we add S in the third person singular. Pronunciation, so this is the tricky part. In the present simple, S can be quite tricky. It has 3 different pronunciation sounds. So, we have S, Z, and is. So, S, Z, is. So if we look at the verb works, eats, the S comes after an unvoiced or silent sound, and we hear S. With Z, so if we look at the verbs lives and plays, this is when S comes after a voiced consonant or vowel sound. And then we have is. So if we look at the verbs watches, fixes, this is when S comes after consonants with a hissing sound. And this can include other sounds such as ch, j, sh. Let's look at the present continuous. So how do we use the present continuous tense? We can use it for an action in progress at the time of speaking. I am waving. I am eating. He is speaking on the telephone. We can use it for a temporary situation. I'm learning Spanish at the moment. We can also use it for future plans. I'm having a party on Sunday. This is definitely one to look out for. I am having a party on Sunday is the present continuous tense, but it's referring to a future time. Many students will find this quite tricky. How do we form it? So you need your subject plus the verb to be plus verb plus ing. So she is sleeping, or she isn't sleeping in the negative. And to make a question, is she sleeping? So have a think about how you can use this in the classroom. Look at what I'm doing at the moment. I am combing my hair. I am waving. And I am eating. So use mime in the classroom with younger learners to get them to tell you what you're doing using the present continuous tense. What about pronunciation? So pronunciation issues with I'm eating is often used when we contract it. So rather than saying I am eating, we say I'm eating. So think about students misunderstanding when it's said quite quickly in fast native speech. Or maybe they expect to hear the long form I am playing rather than I'm playing, and they think it's something different. Let's have a look at the past simple. So how do we use the past simple? It's a completed past action. I woke up late yesterday. It's something that happened once in the past. I met my husband in 1999. And it's something true for some time in the past. I lived in Spain for 10 years. So with regular verbs, it's quite simple. We have the verb and we add ed according to the spelling. So let's have a look. Positive sentence, she tried hard. Negative sentence, she didn't try hard. And question, did she try hard? Let's focus on pronunciation with past simple regular verbs. So ed is pronounced t after verbs ending in a voiceless or unvoiced sound. So this means there is no vibration in the vocal cords. So for example, watched, looked, dropped, started, touched, jumped, and danced. Duh, infinitives that end in a voice sound, so when there is vibration. Played, copied, followed, phoned, arrived, and studied. And then we have id. So these are infinitives that end in t or d. So for example, decided, needed, visited, chatted, or lifted. So again, remember, students will need lots of exposure and lots of practice to stop them saying play-ed and watch-ed. So always make sure they're pronouncing the past simple regular verbs correctly. Again, just to consolidate, spelling changed with ed verbs. So remember, spelling changes for regular ed verbs in the past simple. For any verbs that end in e, we just add d to the verb. For example, like becomes liked and love becomes loved. For the majority of words that end in a vowel followed by y, we just add ed. For example, play becomes played. For any words that end in a consonant followed by a y, we change the y to I and then add ed. For example, cry becomes cried and hurry becomes hurried. For one-syllable words that end in a pattern of consonant, vowel, consonant, we double the last letter and then we add ed. For example, jog becomes jogged. Let's look at irregular verbs. So the problem with the past simple tense is categorising verbs into regular or irregular verbs. Irregular verbs will need to be studied and remembered, as there is no simple pattern like with regular ed verbs. So eat becomes ate, do becomes did, blow becomes blew, draw becomes drew, get becomes got, cut stays the same and is cut, and buy becomes bought. So we need exposure and regular practice, review and consolidation. A really good activity is to do a board race at the end of every lesson. So 2 teams are lined up at the board with a pen at the ready. The teacher shouts the verbs in the base form: eat, drive, play, walk. And the students have to run to the board and write the irregular form and then pass the pen to the next person. It's fun and fast-paced, and at the end there is opportunity for further elicitation and concept checking, and also a focus on spelling. And you will find students will need to review this regularly to help them remember. It's always advisable to try and find an irregular verb list and give it to your students so they have it to hand, and maybe have one displayed in your classroom so you can make reference to it when you're teaching. Let's look at the past continuous. So when do we use it? We use the past continuous when we're telling stories. The birds were singing. With interrupted actions in the past. When I sat down, they were serving the first course. With parallel actions. My family were chatting whilst I was cooking the meal. And at a specific time as an interruption. Last night at 4 p.m, I was reading a magazine. So what's the form? We use was or were plus the verb plus ing. So let's look at a positive example. I was staying there during the week. A negative example. I wasn't staying there during the week. And a question? Were you staying there? So what are the pronunciation issues with the past continuous tense? Often it's the weak forms, and that's when we as native English speakers speak very quickly and it can be difficult to understand. So the birds were singing rather than the birds were singing, and this can be quite difficult for students. So focus their attention to weak forms and native speakerism. Let's look at the present perfect simple. So when do we use it? For life experiences, I have visited every country in Europe. I have never eaten shark. Duration, from the past until now. I have studied in Valencia for 3 years. And a recent completed action. I have just finished my assignment. So how do we form it? We have our subject and the verb have or has plus our past participle. I have been to Tunisia. Have been. In the negative form, I haven't been to Tunisia. And in the question, have you been to Tunisia? So one of the best ways to practice this is the have you ever game. Have you ever witnessed a crime? Have you ever met the Queen? Have you ever met anyone famous? What are the pronunciation issues? I have is often contractive to I've, and this can be quite difficult for students to recognise and remember. Okay, let's look further at the present perfect. This tense tells us about time, but it's not the past tense. We often use the words just, yet, and already, and they give us a sense of that time. So when you listen to the sentence, I have just eaten, what sense of time does that give you? It means it's just been done. I have already left. Let's look at the word already. It's something that you have already done. And I haven't left yet. So yet gives us that time indication. We also use 2 words, for and since, with the present perfect to give us a more accurate sense of time. I have lived in Spain since 1998, so we're being very specific about the year. I have studied Chinese for 2 weeks. And this gives us the indication that you've been studying for 2 weeks. So all of these words are really important to associate with the present perfect tense. Let's focus on the present perfect continuous. So how do we use it? What's the meaning? We use it to emphasize the duration of an action. He has been cleaning for 3 hours. We use it to talk about an activity that's recently stopped. I've been looking for a new job since January, but I've now found a job, so therefore it's recently stopped. And to talk about actions happening recently. John has been working a lot recently. So how do we form it? We have our subject, and we have or has, plus been, plus verb, plus ing. So I've been playing a game. I haven't been playing a game. Or as a question, have you been playing a game? And again, the pronunciation here will be with the contractions. I have been, I've been. So always make students aware of the long form and the contracted form. Let's look at the past perfect. When do we use the past perfect? What's the meaning? It's an action that finished before another action took place. So an example here would be, Richard had already left when his colleague arrived in the office. We can use it for cause and effect, combining it with the past simple. I was late as there had been an accident on the motorway. And we can use just with the past perfect to refer to an event that happened a short time before now. The train had just left when I reached the station. So how do we form it? We use our subject plus had plus our past participle. So a positive sentence, I had already seen the new house. A negative sentence, they hadn't already seen the new house. And a question, had they already seen the new house? Let's move on to future time. This is the future simple form, will. So when do we use will? We use it to express a future intention. I will go to the office tomorrow. Or to make a prediction. It will snow tomorrow. Or in a spontaneous decision, we'll get a takeaway. Watch out for pronunciation issues here, because some learners again will get confused between I will and the contracted form I'll. And you can see with the future simple form, it's very easy. We just use will. If we look at the future continuous, how do we use it? What's the meaning? We use it to talk about an event that will be in progress at a certain time in the future. So let's look at some examples. This time next month, I'll be trekking in the mountains. Or, by January, we'll be lying on a beach in Mexico. So how do we form it? We have our subject plus will plus be plus verb plus ing. The future perfect simple. So how do we use it and what does it mean? We use it to talk about things that will have happened by a certain time in the future. So let's look at some examples. By Monday, she will have finished her report. By the time you read this, I will have finished the job. So how do we form it? We have our subject plus will plus have plus our past participle. Future perfect continuous. So how do we use it and what's the meaning? We talk about how long things have been happening by a certain time in the future and beyond. So some examples. By 2006, I will have been living in Birmingham for 10 years. Next month, he will have been teaching at the same school for 30 years. So how do we form it? We have our subject plus will plus have plus been plus verb plus ing. The future going to. So when do we use this? When you've made some plans, I'm going to buy the house. When you've made a decision to do something, I'm going to visit my uncle in Spain. This is something we really need to watch out for. We can use the present simple tense to refer to the future. So let's look at the sentence, the train leaves at 6 p.m. If we look at the verb here, leaves, we can see it's present simple, but it's referring to a future time. So this is quite tricky for students because the present simple can refer to a future time, but grammatically it's written in the present simple. And this is similar with the present continuous. It can refer to future time. So what are you doing next week? A present continuous question. I'm taking my driving test. A present continuous sentence referring to a future time. So this can be quite difficult for learners who find it hard to understand that we're using present tenses to refer to a future time. Explain that the tense is in the present, and we can see that from the form, but the meaning is indicating something that is happening in the future. Let's look at conditionals. We'll start with the zero conditional. Now, generally, by the time you get to the conditionals, your students will have learnt the majority of the easier tenses. And this is useful because the zero conditional is made up of the present simple, So they should have already seen the present simple before they do the zero conditional. So what is the zero conditional? Well, this is something that is 100% true. So for example, if you heat ice, it melts. That's always going to happen. If you heat water, it boils. Again, 100% true. If it is lunchtime in London, it is breakfast time in New York. And again, this is 100% true because of time differences. If it rains, the ground gets wet. This is something that is 100% true. So if we look at how we form it with the if clause. And so we need if plus present simple plus present simple. So conditionals, with the zero conditional, we talk about things that are always true 100% of the time. So this could be a fact or a general situation. We're now going to move on and look at some other conditionals. The first conditional talks about things that are probably or probable and highly likely. So about 70%. The second conditional talks about unreal or imaginary situations and consequences. And the third conditional talks about hypothetical or imaginary situations in the past. The first conditional is 70% possible or probable, some kind of probable situation in the future. It refers to present or future, possible or likely situations. Let's have a look. If Liverpool win, they'll be top of the league. It's a possibility. If you work hard, you'll pass your exams. I will come if I can. If you walk under a ladder, you'll get bad luck. So we can see here, we need if, we need present simple, and then we add will or won't, positive or negative, plus the infinitive. With the second conditional, we're referring to present or future situations which the speaker thinks are impossible or unreal. So let's have a look at some unreal or imaginary situations. If I met David Beckham, I'd ask for his autograph. What is the likelihood of me meeting David Beckham? It's probably impossible. If I won the lottery, I'd buy a yacht. How many people win the lottery? If I bought my own house, I'd decorate it all blue. So perhaps this is referring to someone who has no money, so therefore it is impossible. If I lived to be 100, I would probably have no teeth. And I would go if they asked me, but they didn't ask. So how do we form this? We have our if clause plus past simple, and then our main clause, which is would or wouldn't, plus our infinitive. So we can see again with the conditional tenses, we're using tenses that students will have already looked at. With the third conditional, this is referring to past situations that cannot be changed. So past events that are untrue, maybe we speculate about past events or hypothetical situations. So if you had worked harder, you would have passed your exams. We can't change it now because it's happened. If you had paid more attention, you wouldn't have crashed the car. If I had seen my friend, I would have spoken to her. And they wouldn't have been late if they'd have caught the train. So with the third conditional, we use the if clause and the past perfect tense, plus would have or wouldn't have, and our past participle. Okay, let's just consolidate and review the conditional tenses that we've looked at. And please remember, it's important for learners to get a good understanding of general tenses before they embark on conditionals. So with zero conditional, it's something that's 100% true. If you heat ice, it melts. If it's lunchtime in London, it's breakfast time in New York. And if you heat water, it boils. So we have if plus present simple plus present simple. So definitely the easiest of the conditionals to learn. The first conditional is about 70% possible or probable situation in the future. So if Liverpool win, they'll be top of the league. If you work hard, you'll pass your exam. So we have our if clause plus present simple plus will or won't and our infinitive. With the second conditional, we can maybe take the percentage down to 5%. It's an unreal or unlikely situation. So if I met the Queen, I'd ask for her autograph. If I won the lottery, I'd buy a yacht. So here we can see we have our if clause, and we use the past simple with would or wouldn't and our infinitive. And with the third conditional, these are past events that are untrue, and we could use them to speculate about past events. If you had worked harder, you would have passed your exams. If you'd paid more attention, you wouldn't have crashed into the wall. So we've got our if clause plus the past perfect, would or wouldn't have, and our past participle. Tips with conditionals. When the condition comes first, we use a comma after the conditional. When the condition comes second, no comma is needed. Conditionals have two parts, the if clause and the main clause. The if clause tells us the condition and the main clause tells us the result. Let's look at the passive tense. In an active sentence, the subject of the verb usually does or causes the action. The car hit the lamppost. But in the passive or the passive voice, in this type of sentence, something is done to or happens to the subject of the verb. So the lamppost was hit by the car. When do we use the passive voice? When we're more interested in the event than the person who did the action. So an email was written. We don't know who wrote it. To talk about historical events, the microwave was invented by Percy LeBaron Spencer. To talk about scientific processes or technical processes, bread is made from wheat. The pods are harvested. The simple present passive. Let's look at the difference here between an active and passive sentence. People grow cotton in India. This is active. Cotton is grown in India. This is our passive sentence. So some further examples. Coffee is grown in South America. iPads are manufactured in China. Silk is produced in India. And diamonds are mined in South Africa. The passive past simple. And this is to talk about events in history. So printing was invented in China. The Eiffel Tower was built in 1889. The Empire State Building was built in 1930. The Mona Lisa was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. And penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming. How do we form the passive tense? So let's have a look. Here are some examples. In the present simple passive, we could say, it is mended. In the past simple passive, it was mended. In the future simple passive, it will be mended. In the present perfect simple passive, it has been mended. In the past perfect simple passive, it had been mended. And in the future perfect simple passive, it will have been mended. In the present continuous passive, it is being mended. And in the past continuous passive, it was being mended. So passive tenses are formed with the auxiliary verb to be in the appropriate tense, plus our past participle. Okay, let's review and let's have a look through some of the tenses again. She wrote a long letter to her sister. So just pause a minute and have a look at that sentence. What's the tense? So this is the past simple tense with an irregular verb. So we can see we've got the verb wrote, which is the past of the verb to write. Let's look at another example. He has been teaching English for 10 years. Again, pause and think about the tense use in this sentence. This is the present perfect continuous tense, and the form is have plus been plus verb plus ing to talk about a specific number of years. So he started teaching English in the past, and it still has a relationship to now. Let's look at another example. If it stops raining soon, we'll go for a walk. Again, pause and think about the tense in this sentence. This is a first conditional sentence, and we can see the if clause plus present simple plus will used for probable situations in the future. A further example. Miriam is having a party on Saturday. Again, pause and think about what tense is being used in this sentence. This is the present continuous, and the sentence is used to convey a future meaning. So remember, students may find this difficult. So we have is forming the present continuous, and on Saturday is referring to a future time. Another example. I haven't eaten meat for years. Again, pause and think about the tense in this sentence. This is an example of the present perfect simple. It's something that started in the past and still has a connection to now. And we can see we have in the negative form plus our past participle eaten. Sally likes chocolate. Again, think about the tense used in this sentence. This is one of the easiest tenses, the present simple, but we have that change in the third person. So remember, Sally likes, we add the S. Another example. By this time next year, they will have been married for 40 years. Again, pause and think about the tense in this sentence. This is a future perfect sentence, and it's a future event that has a definitive end date. And the last one, I'll meet you at 6 p.m. So pause and think about the tense used in this sentence. This is the future simple tense, and we can see we have the contracted form of I will, which is have been, I'll meet. Let's look at the word person. This is when we refer to person in grammar, and we're referring to he, she, they. So in singular, the person would be I, you, he, she, or it. And in plural, the person would be we, you, or they. Number is a grammatical category, and we use it to talk about either singular or plural. We use the grammatical category number with nouns, pronouns, determiners, and verbs. So now we've come to the end of Learning Objective 2 for Module 2. So let's reflect on some key language. Tenses. So we've looked through all of the tenses, and it's about practice and consolidation. So please look at all the further reading examples. Let's look at the present simple. Remember, we can use the present simple for daily routine. With the present continuous, it's what you're doing now. So what am I doing? I am waving. With the past simple, this is a completed past action. So think about words like yesterday or last week or last year that indicate a completed action. We looked at the differences between regular and irregular verbs. We also looked at the present perfect, have plus past participle. So think about life experiences. Have you ever been to Barcelona? We looked at future tenses and the different ways we can use future tenses. A key point to remember here is we can use the present simple and present continuous to convey future time, but they are not future tenses. And then think about conditionals and the probability of each conditional tense. Suggested further reading. So grammar is tricky, and actually until you get into the class and start practicing, it can be tricky to remember all the meta language and everything you need to teach. So I would suggest using English Grammar in Use by Raymond Murphy, or perhaps Teaching Tenses by R. Aitken. And another really good book is Grammar for English Language Teachers by Martin Parrott. And these may help consolidate and review some of the items that we've looked at.